welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. And before we get into this week's episode, I just want to remind everybody that if you want to find out more about the From the Shadows podcast, go to our website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com. There's all kinds of links to all of our social media. You can go find the Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, all kinds of crazy stuff. Find our Patreon page, where if you want to get episodes early without commercials, you can sign up there. Well, I think we have merch somewhere. I don't have any merch. Who's in charge of merch? Nobody sent me any merch. Anita, are you listening? Anyway, if you want to contact us, though, the contact button is the best way to do it on the website. You can email me your story or just whatever you want to talk about. I promise I'll read it, get back to you, and maybe we can have you on the show and you can share your story. And if you want to get a hold of me personally, you can find me at Shane Grove Author on Instagram or even on my Facebook page. Send me a message. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. So far, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. Anyway, with that being said, I got an email from today's guest, and I'm assuming he went through the website, hit the contact button, and sent me this email. And he's nodding, so I think that's what he did. So it does work, I promise you. But this email was jam packed, full of some great paranormal stories, and so there was just no choice but to have this gentleman on the show. So Tommy, thank you for joining us on the From the Shadows podcast, and welcome aboard.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. I'm glad to be on here, and you were very accessible getting through your email. You contacted me, I think, within a couple days. That was awesome. So I'm glad to be here.
Yes, no, I'm glad that you reached out, and it's always great when I'm sitting there, in the chair or whatever, and an email comes through, and the title says werewolf or paranormal, and it's like, okay, I got to read this. So I love it. I love that people feel like they can reach out to us and share these experiences. So I'm just going to let you run with it because you have a ton of stuff. I want everybody to hear as much as they can. So start from the beginning and let's just hear this wild ride that you have lived.
Yes, sir. So I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I lived on top of a mountain there, Suck Creek Mountain, which is on the border of Chattanooga, Marion County, Hamilton County, Marion County. And on my first story here, which I labeled it, as a Thunderbird or Superbird. I was young around the time. I was between 5 and 7. My brother he's only about a little bit over a year older than me. And I remember it was a clear day. Sun was, it was around noon, probably when this happened. Me and my brother just playing in the yard, just being kids. And my brother had noticed something from a distance. I didn't know what it was at first, but he panicked, and me and him both just started running, whatever he saw. And there was this ditch or a hole that was by the road on our property where they had dug a meter line or putting a meter in. And it was like a 4-foot hole, something that the water company just never filled back up. But anyways, something was definitely swooping down or flying down. And we jumped in this hole and kind of kept our heads down because this thing was, flying pretty fast and low. And getting to look at this thing, it was a giant bird. It looked like just a massive crow. it was, I know, at least 45 to 50 foot from the ground or off the ground. And I remember hunkering my head, but still looking, kind of to my shoulder and seeing this thing. And it was, I mean, jet black. You could see feathers, a beak. I mean, just a giant bird. But it had flew, I know, off to the east where I know Highway 27 crosses down the road, but it flew over the tree line and then just flew off. And I know we probably ran to my pop at the time and was so, hey, we saw a bird and stuff like that. I know he didn't believe us, but I don't really talk to my brother or like my brother, at all. And I remember this was a couple years back. We were at a barbecue at his house, and I don't go out of my way to talk to my brother or ask questions or anything like that. But he come out of his way to talk to me. He's like, "Hey, do you remember when we were children and we saw that big bird, that giant bird?" I was like, "Absolutely, I remembered that." And this, like I said, we had similar details to each other, like what we saw. It was just like a massive crow. And like I said, in the area, we knew what planes were. As children, we knew in the area that there was hang gliders because we're kind of close to Dunlap, Tennessee, which is one of the hang gliding capitals of the world. We know it wasn't a hang glider, just a giant bird. And in length of this thing, I mean, the only way I can describe it is like the length of a city bus. Just extremely massive.
That big? I was just kidding.
It was massive. I remember even seeing the shadow past it. Even the shadow blocked out, a little bit of shade and everything. And back then, there was no Google or nothing like that to figure out what this thing was, what we saw. And years down the road, the only way I could really kind of figure out what this thing was is there's a picture at the aquarium in Chattanooga. There's a picture of this guy down there with a big bird. It looks like a big giant crow, and it's not as big as what we saw, but it's definitely a large crow or a large bird or super bird or thunderbird, however you want to label it. But I know what me and my brother had saw was way larger than what was in that picture. But that was one of my first encounters of seeing something paranormal or odd or crypto.
So when you say it was as big as a bus, like the body was, or the wingspan?
So the length, the wingspan.
The wingspan. Okay.
The length of about a city bus. And you think something that big, there would be news reports, something like there was nothing. It came out of nowhere. I mean, it was shrinking in the distance when we first saw it, coming towards us. But coming towards us when we were, hunkered down in this ditch or this hole, the wingspan, everything, it was just extremely massive. It's something I know I'll never forget, and I'm pretty sure wherever my brother is, I'm pretty sure he still doesn't forget.
Now let me ask you: did you feel like it was like if it would have gotten you guys and taken off?
Absolutely, because I remember the head of this thing cocking, or it was looking down. And if you look at different ospreys or hawks, stuff like that, when they're searching for prey and stuff, they're always looking and trying to find, whatever food or resource. But this thing, its head had moved. It had looked down. And we're kids. I was between 5 and 7. This thing could have obviously swooped us up in its talons and been gone. For a 5 to 7 year old, that's my size and everything, that would have been I think would have been a great meal for that thing. And then two kids, me and my brother both, that would have been excellent for that.
That's like a Friday night special at the Brown Derby,
That
2 for 1.
absolutely, absolutely.
So the picture of the guy in the museum, does it give an explanation of what he's holding? Like,
I think it. I think there's actually a little plaque or something under it, but I, I would, if I could go back. I know me and my wife have had pictures. We took a picture of this picture they had at the aquarium, but I wish I could reference the picture of that bird with that guy, but I know uh, it was that bird was definitely smaller compared to what I saw. But I would say that guy in the picture I know he's probably anywhere from 5.5 to probably 6 foot tall, and the picture of this bird is a little bit taller than him, and the wingspan. How they have it spread open. They have the wingspan of this bird spread open, so like it's definitely bigger than that guy that's in the picture.
I'll
But
have to
and it's
see.
random
Have to do a
at the aquarium.
search. Have to do
Absolutely,
have to do a search. I mean, yeah, you're right. That's not a place for a picture of a bird at the aquarium.
at the aquarium.
But I'll bet that picture's somewhere online. That's crazy. And so, I mean, I've heard from people that Tennessee is right there near West Virginia and all the mountainous
Right.
places with the hollers. That, not the Ozark holler, but the hollers in the
Mm-hmm.
and they
In
said,
foothills.
yeah, they said there's like places that never even see sunlight.
Right.
And they said that if there was going to be creatures like that had a great, could hide or not be detected, that's where those creatures would come from, like that.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, I live on top of a mountain, and right next to mine is Signal Mountain, and then right behind it is Whitwell Mountain, and it's a very rural area, very rural. And then you have the Tennessee River right below Sut Creek Mountain. So like, there's definitely places for, I think, of maybe a bird of that caliber could hide, or could not be seen, but just how massive this creature was. Still to this day, like, I mean, it feels like a fantasy, but that happened. And like I said, I don't go out of my way to speak to my brother or nothing like that, but he come to me that time at the barbecue and asked me about it, and I was like, I absolutely remember that. So it wasn't a bad dream for just one of us. So.
Wow, that's kind of an incredible story. I mean, I would love to hear from more people from that area who have had this kind of sighting.
Absolutely.
For sure. Thank God it didn't get you. I mean,
I know, right? I wouldn't be here today.
Jeez. Okay, so you survived. This giant bird.
Yes, sir.
What happens next? As if you should have to deal with anything else. But
right.
What happens next?
So, growing up, we always, my grandpa and my brother and my uncle, we loved to coon hunt. They would always take us coon hunting, even during the middle of the week, a weekday for school. We always went out in the woods. We always, did something with coon hunting and the dogs and stuff. But I remember one of the first paranormal or apparitions that I saw. We were hunting down on this pipeline or a gas line, and this was on top of Sut Creek Mountain. And I know it was late because we'd already got our hunting lights on and had our dogs walking out and stuff. It was late, and I remember that night it was a full moon. It was bright, so most of the time when you're hunting stuff, you want to save as much battery on your light as possible. So we had all shut off our lights, and we were walking down this pipeline, trying to listen for our dogs. And I remember on this pipeline, there was this massive rock or boulder. Definitely an odd placed boulder on this pipeline. But we were walking. We didn't talk or anything after we had went, light silence. We tried to stay quiet so we could hear and listen to our dogs. And we had saw it looked like this guy was sitting on this rock, a full silhouette, all black. You couldn't see any details, no clothing, nothing shiny, no jewelry, no nothing, just solid black. But the only thing that was illuminating was the guy, his cigarette. But, you couldn't smell any smoke or nothing like that. All I could see was the amber of this guy's cigarette. And we didn't say nothing to this guy. It was very odd being out in the middle of the dark, out in the middle of almost nowhere on this pipeline, seeing this random guy by himself on a rock, like I said, in the middle of nowhere. Well, we walked past the rock just to kind of bubble around him, just to put him past us and keep trying to track our dogs and find our dogs. And I looked back to see if this guy was there. He had vanished. He was gone. And like I said, there was no one else around us, but that whatever that thing was on that rock, there was no one running away, walking away. No one crunching any leaves. Scampering away in the woods. And I remember I had told my uncle and my brother, I was like, did y'all see that guy? And they all said, yeah, we saw him. But I said, he's gone. And everyone stopped, looked back, and we turned our lights on. The guy had just vanished. It wasn't really scary. Didn't really spook us, but I know my uncle, he was probably more concerned about someone trying to steal our dog or something like that. But the weird part is just a solid black silhouette. I mean, there was no I didn't see any clothing, no pants, no shirt, no jacket, no nothing. The only thing that was bright on this guy was the amber of his cigarette, and just vanished off that rock.
Did you smell the cigarette?
No, absolutely not.
You just saw the red of it, but
just saw the red of the amber. Just no smell. When we walked past this thing, the guy didn't say hello. Hey guys, how are you doing? Are y'all hunting? Didn't say nothing like that. Just a silhouette shape, but obviously it was a guy. You could tell it was a male, a guy sitting on this rock. But solid black. And the weirdest part is when we walked past this rock, and looking back, and there was nothing there on this rock. Dude completely vanished. We would have heard something walking away from us in the woods, or even on the pipeline. You'd hear the crunch of the grass or something like that. No, the guy had just vanished, completely disappeared.
When I hear stories about people seeing a ghost out in the woods, I got to be honest, I'd be more scared of a real person being out.
Absolutely.
Being out in the middle of the woods.
We've had a couple run-ins, especially out late at night hunting, with people hollering at our dogs, like calling our own dogs names, trying to lure our dogs in. Now, some of the times we don't know if that's actual a person or not, because I remember one of our dogs' name was Jaybird. That was his name, Jaybird. And I remember we were hunting on the TVA's property down in Marion County, and being out in the woods. And this has happened a couple times in the same area, where someone out in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, pretty much, calling our dog's name, and in the middle of the night hollering. When we call for our dogs, normally we can hear our dogs yelping or bawling or barking. We can kind of judge distance and try and figure out where our dog is. And then you'll hear in another direction someone calling our dog, in a direction like that'd be a thick wooded area where it's tough to get to, something or someone out in the middle of nowhere calling our dog, trying to call our dog back to them. That's the scariest part right there. Could be human, could be something different, but that was the scariest parts growing up when we were hunting.
That would be, and that's kind of that'd be an odd name to hear somebody yelling and
Absolutely.
to get it right from not right next. You know what I'm saying? Like through the woods, be like, they say Jaybird or they say, what? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's not like, hey, tiger, or hey, buddy, or whatever.
We had most of the time we would hunt with anywhere from 2 to 3 dogs, and this didn't just happen with our dog Jaybird. We had another dog named, and I didn't name these dogs, by the way, but another dog's name was Weapon, and the other one was Blueberry. And we would also hear
Blueberry got screwed in the name. I got to be honest with you. Blueberry. I mean, come on.
You hear, stuff like that out in the woods, and someone's mimicking your dog's name from a distance. Like, that's very spooky. And that happened a lot. And it was always during that certain area around the TVA training sites or the TVA's property. And they have a lot of property down there. But it would always seem to happen down there at the TVA properties where someone's calling our dog's name, or, just having weird vibes out there, or, just getting goosebumps or chicken skin. As soon as you go out there, it's going to be a scary night.
Jeez. Yeah, that's another thing. That's another one. That can't just have happened to you. Okay.
Oh, right.
I would love to hear another story about somebody being out there and having somebody else call their dogs. And I mean, is that something though that, as a coon hunter, that would have, like, would there be guys that would really go out there and try to steal dogs like that, or would they just do something else? I mean, that's pretty bold.
We would hear stories like that a lot, actually. We did a lot of competition hunts. We would get into the coon hound magazines and go through all these tournaments and stuff like that. And you'll hear some of these old timers during these tournaments, say someone was calling our dog out in the middle of the night and stuff like that. Well, I've heard stories like that a bunch. But, who's to say that's actually a human out there calling your dog? And who's waiting in the middle of the woods, late at night, calling your dog?
Exactly.
That's scary.
Exactly.
And I think that happens a lot too.
Wow, that was even on the list, was it?
No, that wasn't. No, that's just one of the many things in my story.
Wow. Okay, that was great though. I love that. I love that. I mean, and then the fact that it didn't just happen to you; it happened to people with you, and then other people confirm. I love. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Where do we go
rolling
from here?
Let's see here. So, I know when I was 13 or 14, me and a couple of my buddies, we had 4-wheelers, and we'd always ride the mountain and stuff like that. And I remember we were wanting to go build a little cabin or a little lean-to out in the woods. This one, it was either on a weekend or on a weekday. I don't know. We were kids just having fun on 4-wheelers. But we had gathered a bunch of scrap wood and stuff that I had on the farm. We put it on the back of our 4-wheelers, and we drove down what we call the strip mines on Suck Creek Mountain. Some of it's like a dirt road, and the rest of it is kind of like just trail made out in the woods. But we drove around, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 miles, just trying to find an area to build this cabin. And we'd found this little hill, little grassy hill that had a bunch of like a wood line on top of it. So we drove our 4-wheelers up there. We started building this little lean-to. It only took a couple hours. We built this thing, and it was getting pretty late. We had camping gear. We had everything we needed, just to stay in this little lean-to or cabin. And I remember late at night, it must have been, I know it was past midnight. I had to use the bathroom. And at that point, the fire was already put out. There was no light or nothing. We didn't have any flashlights on us. When we were building this cabin, we used the lights on our 4-wheelers, so we didn't have any flashlights or nothing like that. But I remember having to get up and use the bathroom, and I had saw this blue orb, and inside of this orb, you could see what it looked like to be a lantern or something, some sort of shape inside this blue orb. And it was, let's see here, probably I know at least 20 foot away from me, this blue orb, and it was bouncing off the ground, so it had a cadence to it, like it was someone walking. And we were out in the middle of nowhere, off these strip mines where we built this cabin, and the color of this thing was, I mean, just an odd color of blue, like it was. It's hard to describe this color, but anyways, it was bright, but it wasn't like bright enough where I could like see myself or anything like that. Like it wasn't just illuminating the whole section of the woods that we had stayed in, but it had a cadence to it, and I looked at it, and there was no one behind this orb. I didn't hear anyone walking through the woods, no crunch of the leaves or breaking sticks or nothing like that. Just a floating orb. And that startled me a little bit, out in the middle of nowhere, seeing this blue orb. But you could see on the inside what it looked like a lantern. And lanterns they're not blue. They don't, glow blue. It's either a amber, like a reddish orange. But it had floated just softly through the woods and just vanished. And at that point, I was like, "There's whatever that it was." It freaked me out, and I'd woken my buddies up to get out of there, because the first thing I probably thought was we're on someone's property. But later on, looking at it, we were nowhere near no one's property line. We were nowhere near the roadways. We were as far out as we can go on our 4-wheelers in the strip mines to build these cabins, because we didn't want someone to come up and tear this cabin down or run us off or something like that, or spook us. But that was just a weird orb floating through the woods. And the reason why we call it the strip mines is because there was old coal miners in the area a long time ago. I know coal miners and moonshiners and stuff in that area, where we'd always find old steels and stuff like that up in the mountains. But there was no one in that area, no housing, no roadways, no cars, no nothing. Just a blue orb floating.
And naturally, when you see something like that, you think it's attached to somebody holding the light, right?
Exactly. So. Or some sort of flashlight, or a headlamp or something like that. But it was a perfect shaped orb with something inside of it, which it resembled a lantern. I know that, because my grandpa growing up, he always had lanterns. They were hung up around the porch and stuff like that, just old timey lanterns and stuff like that. But a random lantern in the at my age back then, that'd just be very odd, seeing it. But blue, that color, that was the weirdest thing. Like this blue orb floating like it was. It was crazy looking. But that's just another one of the many things out
Yeah.
out in the woods.
The guy with all the luck. Okay.
Right.
Go so what else you got? What else you got?
All right. So I know I was in between 11th grade and maybe a little bit after graduation. After 12th grade, we went ghost hunting. I know I had a couple of my buddies with me. I don't I don't know why we started to go ghost hunting. I know one of my buddies had some experiences with him and his brother, and I guess it's just one of the ideas you do as a kid, or as a teenager. But we started going up Whitwell Mountain to this area called the Pocket. And the reason we went out to the Pocket is because one of my friends had said that him and his brother and his brother's girlfriend had went out there a couple weeks prior, and some spooky stuff had happened out there. And that's when we decided to drive out there. And we drove out there in my little S10, little two-door, two-wheel drive vehicle. So I had two of my friends in the front of the cab, and a couple of my buddies in the tailgate. So we drove to this area up and called the Pocket, and it goes from a paved road to a gravel road to a small little trail almost. So you park your truck. I parked my truck at the very end of the rocks and the tree line, and you go down in this large gulf, this like huge gulf area. I think they call it Savage Gulf up there too. But so we all started getting out. We had flashlights, stuff like that, and we started walking down this gulf. And I think they were using that gulf as some sort of construction, maybe in there, or something they were doing down in the Gulf. I know that because there's always people with construction equipment parked up in the area where the gravel was, but no one was there at that night. We were the only ones parked out there at the end of the Gulf. While we were walking down, we started hearing like some old timey music. I don't know what those whatever they used with the old records, whatever that device is. I don't know what that is, but it sounded very old timey, and it was echoing through the Gulf there. And that was very odd. And the closer we got down into the Gulf, the louder it got. And I remember looking around in the trees and stuff. There was something floating to my left. It was definitely in a white dress, and it was on top of the tree line or in top of the trees, and it was floating from tree line to tree line. And we're shining our light up there. It definitely looked like a female in a dress, a white dress, going from tree to tree, and not on the bottom of the tree, at the very top of the trees. So it was jumping from branch to branch. And once we all got eyes on that and saw that, we all panicked. Everyone scattered and took off back running up the Gulf. And I think we were already about a mile in, so we were running as fast as we could straight up to get back in my truck. And we all piled into my truck once we got there, and I remember my buddies were screaming in the back, and the two guys in front of me were screaming as well. And I tried to start the truck, and it wouldn't start, which that never happens. That truck was pretty sound. It was a nice truck. I I've never had it with a starting issue or a battery issue or nothing like that, and it just would not start. And I remember trying to crank, and the guys in the back started screaming louder and louder, and they were slapping on the truck, telling me to go, like, please drive, go, go. And I happened to look into the mirror, the rearview mirror or the side mirror, one of the two, and there were these green glowing eyes. I mean, they were massive. And that right there, I don't know. I've never seen eyes that big or why they're glowing right behind the truck. But my truck finally started, and we took off, and we didn't look back. We didn't go back to that area. We didn't. I know we talked about it for a little bit, but I don't. Most of the guys that I've talked to over the years, stuff, they don't even mention what happened that night or what happened out in the Gulf. But that was one of my first ghost hunting experiences as a kid.
That should have been your last. Just saying, because the truck never always starts, except in the horror movie. Just so you can remember, just so you remember that. Like, what were those guys in the back? Like, they're looking at these eyes. What did they see anything with these eyes or
they
what?
It was just eyes. It was just green glowing eyes. And I don't know. I wondered if I could talk to them now. I'm sure I would know what they saw even before that or how it appeared. I never got any of those details. It was just something that happened as a kid. But looking back, I wish I'd have got more details about that. But
so when you saw the white figure going from treetop to treetop, you described it as jumping, but was it
was leaping like.
So it was. Did you see a physical reaction from the tree? Like as it jumped into the tree, did the tree move or?
I don't remember seeing anything from the tree moving. Maybe I saw a little bit of the branch, but it was like gliding or free floating almost. But I know I saw legs moving, so it had to have touched limb, going from tree to tree. But the flowing dress, the legs moving, the hair, definitely a female. And I couldn't tell you what type of dress or nothing like that, but I want to say this apparition or whatever we saw was at least maybe 30, 35 yards away from us. So we got a pretty decent look at it.
Yeah.
But you could see this thing clearly floating from tree to tree, or jumping from tree to tree. And once we all got eyes on it, that's when we all scattered. We knew something was definitely not right, or why a woman would be, jumping from tree to tree or going from tree to tree out in the middle of nowhere in this Gulf. We all realized something was bad, something was not right, and we all scattered and took off running up the Gulf.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
That definitely, shook me for a while. I know for a couple of days after that, I was just kind of locked in my room, just kind of thinking about it and stuff like that, and just spooked and shook up by what we saw. But you would think I would have been like, I don't want to see stuff like that again. I want to be away from this stuff. But no, the rest of my story, something always happens later on down my life. So, but it didn't really scare me enough to be away from the paranormal. It kind of intrigued me at that point, like realizing there's something else out there, that I'd like to kind of be a part of, or I'd like to know about.
Yeah, I can imagine it'd be one of two ways: either scares you out of doing that, or it just makes you want to find more answers. So
absolutely.
Okay, so what happened next?
All right. Well, at this point, I was in the Army. I was stationed in Alaska, and I had gotten housing from the Army up in Alaska. I didn't stay at the barracks when I first got there. I'd gotten housing because at that time I was married, and I got a dog, a rescue dog. It was like a Saint Bernard husky mix that I'd had, and I remember late at night watching TV. My dog was down on the floor to my left, and like I said, this house was an old housing project that the military had. They had lead in the paint and stuff like that. It was a very old housing, and they were actually tearing our housing down section by section. And I know my housing had got demolished when I was overseas, but before I deployed, like I said, I had a dog there. I'd stayed there for a couple months before I deployed. But late at night, I was watching TV, my dog laying on the floor. And like I said, it was a St. Bernard and husky mix, so it was a furry dog. I remember the lights were out in the house. The only thing that was bright was the TV. And I just happened to look down just to check on my dog or look at my dog, make sure she was good. And I had seen from her tail all the way up to her neck, she had these lines going down her tail that were parting the fur, like separating the fur. It looked like finger marks, like if you take your dog and run your fingers through your dog's hair. And I was watching that in real time, from the tail all the way to the dog's neck. Like in grooves of 3 fingers, had scratched all the way up from the tail to the neck, and my dog had freaked. She had jumped up and ran towards the steps, and there was like a banister, like a drywalled banister up the stairs, so you can't really see behind it. But the dog looked like, to me, it was being thrown from the bottom of the stairs up to the top of the stairs, and to the very top of the stairs was a bathroom. The dog had flew up through the stairs like it was being thrown, and was screaming, and then took off into another bedroom and was whining and screaming. And I remember going to check on her immediately to see what the heck was going on. The dog was growling at me, would not let me touch her, would not let me go into the bedroom until later on that night, and had to calm her down with like some bologna or something like that, just to kind of get her back to normal. But you could clearly see when the dog was laying on my side, it looked like finger marks going up and down the dog's back, and freaked that dog out. And the next thing after that was the dog being thrown. I know I wasn't able to see behind the steps because, like I said, the banister was drywalled, so I couldn't see if the dog was being drug or nothing like it. But it looked like it was being thrown, because I could see from the banister, I could see the top of the dog. It was so fast that it happened. I know the dog is not going to run up the steps as fast as it was, because it had surgery and not that long ago, because it had like a flip stomach situation. So the dog was not going to run like that up the steps, because it had, she had stitches and stuff. She looked like she was being thrown from the bottom all the way to the top.
Wow. So it's almost like, so you actually saw somebody stroking their fingers through the dog's fur.
Exactly. Like if you would harden your fingers down the dog's fur.
And then the dog realized it wasn't you.
Yep. It definitely wasn't. I mean, I was watching TV and just happened to look down when I saw that, and I was like, that's odd. Normally I would have thought like something, the dog's getting his heckles up or something like that. Like it wasn't like that. It was 3 distinct lines going from its tail all the way to its neck. And I guess by the time that dog had realized, like, it wasn't me. It started screaming and hollering up towards the corner of the steps, and then from that point being thrown up.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. This, I keep thinking this is going to get like better and better. It just gets worse and worse.
It'll get worse. I promise. It'll get worse.
Okay, let's go.
All right. So 2011, I was on Christmas leave. I was getting ready for a deployment, and I think I only had a couple of days of leave. So me and my ex had flown from Alaska back to Tennessee, and her parents had offered us to come stay with them through Christmas at their house, and they lived in Chickamauga Battlefield, which is between Tennessee and Georgia. And now Chickamauga Battlefield, there's all kinds of stories down there of, you know, haunting and hearing shelling and stuff like that. We got off the plane, and her parents, they didn't meet us at the airport. They had called us and said, "Hey, it's going to be late. We're going to a Christmas party. Y'all go ahead and go to the house, and we'll meet y'all late in the night." So we got to her house. It was late. I know we were exhausted. We were jet lagged and everything. We were going to sit up and wait at least until her parents had come home and figured out where my rooming situation is going to be and all that stuff. So when you first walk in the house, they had this living room. There was no TV. They had like a living room area, and then their actual living room where they go and watch TV and stuff is downstairs. But they had their Christmas lights up, their Christmas tree in the living room. So we decided to wait right there until her parents come home. And her parents had called and said, "Hey, it'll be about an hour or so." And I remember I was talking to them. They was like, "By the way, our house is a little different. But if you open yourself up to our house, you might see things or hear things." And at that point I was like, you know, letting myself open. I was like, I've had a couple experiences before. I was like, I'm not worried about it. Well, I was sitting on this chair by the Christmas tree, and there was no TV in there. It was there was no sound, there's no radio, nothing going on. We were just sitting there waiting for her parents to show up. And I remember something playing with my ear, my right ear. And I heard like a giggle, like a child giggling. And I had looked over to my left, and I was like, that wasn't my ex. She wasn't touching me on the ear or nothing like that. And at that point,
it could have been a real horror story that would have been really
exactly. Right after that, there was this, god awful screaming, and it echoed through the house. And I remember looking at her. That was like, what was that? And I know they had a dog in the house. The dog was very old. The dog was in the kitchen at that point when we had heard that loud screaming, and the dog had got up and started growling and looking down the hallway. And I was like, that was creepy. I was like, what's going to happen the rest of the night? Well, our parents come back, and they were tired. They were exhausted, and they showed us to the guest bedroom, and they were like, "We'll see y'all in the morning. We're glad y'all can make it." They went straight to their bedroom. They were, like I said, they just went from a party, and I got into this guest bedroom. It was already creepy in there anyway, because as soon as you go into this guest bedroom, there's this lamp, and it was like a green like a green glow in this lamp. It was creepy. And I was like, let's just go to bed. Let's get up in the morning. We'll do our Christmas stuff. And, we got to get ready for our next flight to go back because I was getting ready for deployment. And late at night, extremely late, I couldn't sleep. I know I was still kind of wound up from the flight. I was tired, but wasn't all the way ready to go to bed. And while laying in the bed, I had heard and seen the bedroom door jiggling. And I was looking. I was like, well, it's probably her parents coming up to check on us or something like that. And the door handle jiggled and then jiggled, a little harder. And then the door just creaked open. And I remember kind of closing my eyes in case her parents come in. I didn't know why they were coming to check on us or if they wanted to get us up. I didn't know what was going on, but I looked and I had seen this figure there, and it was definitely a female figure, and it looked like it was wearing a like deer clothing, or it looked like a Native American. It definitely looked like it was wearing a deer skin cloth or clothing. And I remember had nudging my ex-wife, and I was like, hey, do you see that? And she's like, Tommy, if there's something there, I don't want to know about it, and I don't want to hear about it. I was like, no, I'm serious. You need to look at, there's something right there. You could see the black hair of a female apparition with deerskin clothing. And I was like, there's definitely something there. Please look at this. And she didn't want no part of it. And right at that time, this thing had just disappeared. The door had slammed shut, and that's when my ex had just woken up. She's like, okay, what was that? I was like, I told you to look up and see what that was. And she's like, I don't want no part of this. Just go to bed. So that really freaked me out at that point. And a little bit after that, I was like, I really need to use the bathroom. I was like, this kind of spooked me a little bit. So I had got up and gotten a little bit of a nerve to go use the restroom. So I had opened the door, looked for the bathroom, and it was right across the hall. And I had opened the bathroom door, flipped the light on. I had shut the bathroom door, used the bathroom, and then when I looked back after washing my hands, the bathroom door was wide open, and the bedroom, the guest bedroom, the lights were on. So I took off running into the bedroom to see what was going on. My ex, she was still asleep. She didn't get up. She didn't flip the lights on. She didn't open any doors. And at that point, I was like, okay, something's really going on here. I was like, I guess I opened myself up to whatever this is in this house. And I was like, I'm just going to go to bed and just get past this night, and we'll deal with all this in the morning. So I get into the bed, and right after that incident, I could hear from the kitchen all the way down to the hallway running. And you could hear loud footsteps running and sprinting up and down the hallway. And I was like, well, it's probably her parents going to the kitchen or getting water or something like that. Later on, I'd figure out her parents didn't even come up or get up out of the bed that night. They didn't even open the doorway. They said they were sound asleep. But I talked to her mom that morning, told her what was going on, and I was like, "What, you sure that wasn't your dog or anything crazy going on that night?" She said, "We didn't get out of the bedroom. Our dog was with us the entire night." And she said, "Plus, we have a bathroom in our room, so we don't have to get up out of our bedroom at all." And I was like, "Okay, that's odd." And I was like, "There's definitely something going on here." And that morning before I had left, we were going to go see my parents, and then I was going to get ready for our flight and head back out to Alaska. They had asked me to move some boxes down the stairway. And I was like, sure, I'll help y'all out. We started moving a couple things, and I remember going down the steps. There is a like a bookshelf or a little niche where people can put stuff or trinkets and stuff like that, where the stairwell is. And I know they had like little bitty ceramic angels and picture frames and stuff like that. And walking down the steps, moving some boxes and stuff, some of those ornaments off the shelf had flown from the stairway into the kitchen. And one of them had broke. And I had talked to my ex's wife, my ex, her mom. I was like, "Hey, I did not break that." I was like, "Something obviously just flew off your bookshelf there." And she said, "Don't worry about it." She said, "Stuff like this happens a lot." And she's like, "I told you, if you are open to it, something's going to happen around here." And that's one of the wildest.
You're open like a Walmart on Black Friday.
Oh, I was
You know
open. I guess
like,
antagonizing.
I mean, good Lord.
I mean, I wasn't really provoking anything or, nothing like that. But I was definitely like, if there's something there, I'd like to see it. But the weirdest thing is that female apparition, obviously looking as looked like a Native American, because in that area there are Indian burial sites around that area, that housing, in Chickamauga. But whatever that was had enough energy to open the door to let me see itself and see. And I didn't see anything on the face. The face was like a black hole, but you could see stringy hair. You could see, like I said, deer skin or some type of animal skin. And then opening and shutting the door, slamming the door. It had enough energy to do that. And that was definitely a wild house. Definitely a spooky night.
Good Lord. Jeez. I'm speechless. Like, what? Like, that's so much stuff going on that I would have, I don't even know. I mean, I would have never got out of bed.
Her mom had told me as well that there's the house that's right behind theirs. They said that their house is extremely worse than theirs. That they have a lot of things happen in that house, and I was like, that's just crazy. I was like, why don't y'all move and stuff? But she said it doesn't bother her. It never bothered her. What was going on? Nothing ever hurt her or scared her or nothing like that. And she said, there's stuff there, but if you keep opening yourself up to it, more things will happen. And I guess I was ready for it that night.
Well, at least, okay, so does that make you feel better to know that it's just not you, that everywhere you go, something happens, that some places are just active?
Absolutely. Yeah. That was a breath of fresh air, her saying that, it wasn't just me. Because my ex, she did not want anything to do with what's going on. I'm assuming because she's had stuff happen there a long time ago. Because she didn't want any part of what was going on or what I was experiencing. Probably from her living there had spooked her enough. She knows, something is definitely odd in this house.
Probably. Okay, Tommy, here's the deal. Give us one more, and then we're gonna have to go to a part 2. There's just I know there's so much more to get to. Just give us one more, and then we'll end the episode.
Let's see
hopefully leave everybody wanting a whole lot more.
Let's see if I can end on a good one here. Okay, I'll jump to this one. So, 2012, I was deployed. I was in Baghdad, Iraq, and we had what we call Building 5, which is Saddam Hussein's his headquarter building or whatever that was. If you look up on the old videos with the invasion of Iraq, you'll see this building. But it was off the embassy where we stayed at. We called it Building 5. I remember off duty, we'd only stayed in Baghdad for a couple of days before we flew to another location. But this building was huge, by the way. I got great pictures of it. It was a massive building, marble, and just a palace. I mean, just a huge palace. Well, I think we were on the second or third floor. We had me and my team. We had a couple rooms that we were staying in. It was late at night. We were off duty. Like I said, we just got on a mission or got something finished. I remember we were laying in the bed in our room, and I had me, another soldier, and one of our other soldiers behind him. So we're only about 3 to 4 in this room. And normally late at night overseas, I would take my laptop while I'm laying down and put on my chest while I'm watching a movie. And I remember that night I was watching the new Batman movie, and one of my other buddies to the side, he was doing some audio or some music. He liked to rap and stuff like that. And I remember he had his headphones in, his computer on, and while I was watching a movie, I remember seeing something to my left. It was like a foggy mist apparition. It was very tall. I know at least 6 foot tall. It was massive. But I kept seeing something while I was on the computer. And I remember shutting my laptop down to see what this thing was. And I seen this, it was I couldn't tell if it was male or female. I know it was in a like Muslim style garb or clothing. I know that. I couldn't really see all the details. I just know this thing was an entity. You could see it, but you could still see through it. It was definitely something that was out of, it wasn't any of my soldiers in that room. It was none of my friends. I remember looking at it, and I remember looking over to my buddy, who was, like I said, he was on his computer too. And I asked him, I was like, "Do you see what I'm seeing?" And, excuse my language, he said, "Yes, I effing see it." He said, "What the F is that?" I was like, "I have no clue." And I remember this thing just vanished. We hit the lights. We were just in shock of what this thing was. It was a full blown apparition, a ghost. It was definitely looking at me or looking in my direction to my bed. Because on my side of the bed was just the wall and a split unit AC above me. So there was no one there, no one laying beside me, no one bunking beside me. Only to my right and behind my buddy were my other soldiers. But we both saw it. We both got spooked on what that was, and we hit the lights, and it vanished. It was gone. That was another odd thing that happened while overseas or right before being overseas and stuff. But we definitely saw that thing that night. And I talked to my buddy not long ago, and he asked me about it as well. I said, "Yeah, I still remember seeing that." Just another wild thing in my stories, I guess.
I mean, that's got to be the last thing you expect to see in the middle of in the middle of what has been a war zone,
Mm-hmm.
basically, right? I mean, and now I have heard lots of stories about the jinn and other things out there in the desert,
Mm-hmm.
and lots of soldiers seeing like devil dogs and all kinds of
Right.
crazy
Yeah.
stuff out there, but I don't think I've ever heard of anything in the palace, one of the palaces.
If you look at this building, you can Google it. The very center of this palace has been completely demolished, where they dropped off some pretty big ordnance there, and the palace was so big. The outside, it's a big square building, a big square palace. The inside of this palace is completely destroyed, and you can see all the rubble. I've got plenty of pictures of seeing the inside of this palace, but on the outsides of it were completely intact, still usable. They had we used a lot of offices there. We had an armory there. We had a lot of things still on the outsides of the building. So there has to be something going on with it being demolished on the inside. I'm pretty sure a lot of people had passed away in that building, which is definitely a spooky place to be, knowing a lot of people had passed in there, and especially Saddam Hussein working out of that building or living there, whatever he's doing there. But the old Ba'athist Party with Saddam Hussein that worked out of that building, I know, but had a lot of history to that place. Has a lot of history there.
Well, Tommy, I can't wait for part 2. I just gotta be honest. I hope everybody enjoyed these stories. Thank you for sharing them. This has been a wild ride.
Yes, sir.
Listen, if you told me we were going to start with almost getting eaten by a giant bird to being in Saddam's palace, I don't know if I would have believed you. That wasn't on my bingo card. You know what I'm saying? But no, I appreciate you sharing these. And like I said, we'll set up a part 2, and we'll get the rest of them.
Yes, sir. And I promise it'll only get weirder down the line on these stories. So I'll be looking forward to sharing the rest of the stories.
Oh boy, I can't wait. All right. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.